Welcome everyone to another self-growth video. This week I'd like to speak about what happens when someone thinks he fixed a problem and he's sure, it seems very clear to him that he's not going to have that problem again at all, and then suddenly he stumbles over it again and it comes up again full force. So for example, let's say someone, he uses his phone a lot or looks at inappropriate things on the phone or whatever the case is, porn or whatever it could be, whatever it might be, and then he thinks he mastered it. He mastered the skill of controlling himself in whatever way, if he scrolls on the phone too much or whatever it is, and then after a good amount of time that seems like everything's okay and all of that, suddenly he fails again. So that's one example. Another example, let's say someone who smokes and then he fails again in let's say even years later, let's say months. People become optimistic. Sometimes people become optimistic quickly, especially someone who's having a problem all the time, and then suddenly for a few weeks they manage, or he or she manages not to have that, like to stop that problem, and then so they become optimistic, and then that also causes them, of course, to feel terrible after they fail. So the question is how to take care of that. So first we have to understand what happens over here. So the person, let's say a normal situation, the person gets very upset. I was managing so well and I was getting better, and then suddenly he's very angry with himself. He's very upset with himself. Another thing that happens is he loses hope, which almost seems odd. He gets angry and loses hope. He thinks, I'm a failure. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to manage to continue. And of course, this comes from the root cause of thinking also that you could erase a habit completely. And that's not true. You can't erase a habit. So it's not a failure that you came back to something that you managed to avoid for a long time. The failure is not that you didn't manage to erase the habit. I wouldn't call it a failure either. But first, let's understand why something like this happens. So we spoke before about environment, how important the environment is reshaping habits. So people think a lot of times, let's say they have a toxic or bad environment. After you reshape your habit, then you could go back to that toxic and bad environment. Now, sometimes it could work if you're going back just for a little bit of time, and then you can be back out of that environment. But you can't go back to an environment that caused you to fail terribly and that continuously caused you to fail, because then the environment, remember, becomes the cue. So therefore, don't think that you're going to be able to go back. It's very, very rare that you're going to be able to go back and not get tempted by the environment. Now, I mentioned before the Rambam that says that a real Baal Tshuva is someone who could come back to the same environment, the same place, and he still, like the same woman, the same love that he has for her, and still not fail. So there is an idea that at a certain point you change the cue. You change the pattern of you. Well, not really that you change. I think the Rambam is saying over here that you're generally in a good environment, which makes you be able to handle a bad environment sometimes. But then that doesn't mean that if you're always going to stay in that environment, that doesn't mean you should choose that environment. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to stay in that environment. Second reason could be because you had restrictions. And then what happened after a little bit, after you succeeded in stopping this bad habit or this bad addiction or whatever it is, then you loosened up on your restrictions. Now, sometimes it could be good, but you have to be very careful on loosening up restrictions, especially if you're going to go back to an environment that's going to be very, very tough for you and going to remind you of your old habits. So that's another reason someone could fail. And again, just to understand, don't think you could erase a habit from your brain. Try avoiding the cues that cause the habit and slowly make them. There are other ways slowly to minimize it so much that it's almost like erased, but you're not going to be able to erase it completely. This is just really, and now this is very important, is don't get upset with yourself when you fail. It's not going to help, especially getting very upset and rebuking yourself too much. It's not going to help, because what's going to happen, you get upset with yourself and then you feel like you're a loser, and that causes you not to strive anymore. And the reason you don't want to strive anymore is you feel like, what happens when I strive, and what happens when I try being better is I just basically get a little bit high and then fail again. So instead of going on this up the ladder and down the slide and up the ladder and down the slide, let me just continue straight, and I just won't become the best person. I'll be I'll be a failure in life. Better for me that than just going up and thinking I'm becoming good, and then fall down the slide down the slide again. So that's what people think, and they're not, and that's a legitimate concern, but that really, I would say it is better to go up and fall than just stay the same, because then maybe each time you could get higher and higher, but really you just need to accept that you're not prepared for that. That's what you have to do, and that's how you could go up. You have to accept failure, and you have to be willing to cope with failure, and it can't be something foreign within you. It has to be something like you disassociate yourself from failure. You don't make it something it can't be something foreign. You have to accept it. But in a certain way, it's also something foreign. Why? Because you disassociate yourself with failure. Not something foreign like, oh, I can't have failure. But no, something foreign that even if it comes in me, I say, oh, that's not me. That's that trying to cause me to fail. And yet, that's what's going to happen. And you have to accept that. And when you accept that, it's going to be much easier. And again, living in the now is very important to help you with that. So this is a very short video, just a little point that I wanted to make. And I hope this really helps you all. And if you enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe, and give a comment. And thank you very much.